Welcome to the 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and every week we take a giant book, break it down bit by bit, and talk about it. This season we are doing The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. We're going up to page 242, the beginning of the second Free Women section. I'm joined as always by Kaija, editor at Open Letter Books, translator of books from Latvian, including The River by Laura Vinogradova and High Tide by Inga Abela.
Is there a question mark in that book title, or
I
did you
think
add
it's
that?
just it's just really hard for Chad to get the pronunciation of English words right.
Vinogradova.
The river?
Also, Arsenal almost scored there to almost tie up the Champions League game. So that was what that was the question was. It's not going in. It's not going
I
in.
do I do want to make an amendment, and for this recording, I would prefer if you referred to me as editress, please.
At a trust, like
Editress. Yes, I believe that's the Doris Lessing blessing way of doing it.
is it what's her name in there? In here, I forget what it is. Not Natalie, something like that.
Uh,
Patricia.
Patricia. I was like Paula. I don't know P names. I think Patricia's right.
There's some stuff with the names I want to talk about. And as always, Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killed Box. How are you doing, Brian? You are on the West Coast. You look warm.
Yeah, it's nice out here. Not too bad. Lots of real estate available if you don't mind it being a cinder heap, but
Yeah, what are
like a
the
phoenix rising from the ashes of the red earth. Does that sound Nobel-esque?
they should have on every real estate listing out there should be like 78% chance of being burned down. Or like,
Yeah.
like you need to have an adjudication score on everything.
I did fly out with probably the worst woman I've ever sat next to in the history of all flights that I've been on.
Oh my.
Uh, yeah, it was brutal. She pounded no less than 7 glasses of red wine.
Hell yeah.
Uh,
It's a big event.
she asked the person they were coming by, like she was ordering snacks like she was at a restaurant. Have you tried these? What's your favorite? And the person and the flight attendant just gives her just like a dead stare, goes, I've not eaten anything on this airplane before. She goes, "Ooh, I'll have that." And then the thing that she's eating it next to me. Have you ever ordered a hot Subway sandwich and forgotten about it in your car for about 3 days? And then you come back into your car and open the door? That's the smell that this sandwich had. It was like a
Oh,
4-day-old meatball marinara in a hot car. So
oh no.
I get to hear and smell that next to me for a little bit.
Oh,
And then after she eats it, she reaches into her bag and takes out one of those dollar store face masks and puts on a moisturizing face mask all over her. She looks like Hannibal Lecter, like she has
yeah,
skin peeling off of her.
I've
So she's
seen
wearing
this,
that
Kaya.
for 10 minutes on the airplane. And then she takes it off. And then rather than throw it away, she sticks it in her cleavage to just rest for a while, slams back 3 more glasses of wine. And then after she's
Yeah.
getting super buzzed, takes the face mask back out of her cleavage and puts it back on her face and tries to start having
Queen.
a
Yes.
conversation with
Yes.
me with this
Yes.
thing on her.
Seriously.
And I'm watching her lips move the mask back and forth. And I thought, man, if there's a way to roll down this window, I'd probably jump out of it right now. I
Is
can't,
this woman single?
I don't know. And then she's cut off and can't get any more red wine because you're
What?
only allowed 1 drink per hour. And
Bullshit.
oh, she's way past it on our flight. And so then she's asking me to buy
Fascist.
her drinks and she'll Venmo me money.
Fuck
And I
yes.
said, sure, sounds good, because I'm just hoping that she passes out. But no, this bitch rallies, man. She does, she is down for it. Yeah, it was
Hero.
fun. Yeah, it
I
was a
I
lot of
think
fun.
this is the
I don't
best
know,
thing
but
So
ever.
it
here's the
sounds like
best
it
part
sounds
though.
like Brian's Mother's Day trip to California is going really, really well. You're treating people well.
Here's the part where like I'm starting to lose my shit though. Is she has on nails, and as she's getting drunk, she starts to chew and peel off all of the nails off of her
Oh,
fingers. So
oh
she's peeling
no.
off her nail job as she's getting drunker and doesn't know where to throw them. So she puts them in her glass of
In the
wine
cleavage.
and but continues to drink the wine with her nails floating in the top of it.
No,
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Yes.
okay. Now I
Okay.
withdraw my offer. Give me
Yeah,
Okay.
queen
courage.
queen
Yeah.
status removed.
And
Crown.
please let us go. And so it's like, M&Ms and a Coca-Cola or peanuts and a Coca-Cola, like whoever weird people do the RC Cola and peanuts,
Yeah, that's
except
like a
it's
southern
red
thing.
wine and your gel nail set. And so she goes and like rips off every nail except for like one, and she chews off half her thumb and just leaving that one hanging. And I was like, get me off of this plane now.
Awful.
How's everybody doing? Let's talk about Doris Lest.
So before we get to that, I have a little bit of bookkeeping to do or want to plug is if you haven't heard it, there are two podcasts that came out this week that are on the same feed, or they're not on the 2 month review feed. They're on the 3% Substack, but the 3% podcast and also the Mining the Delk Archive podcast and Substack, and I'll link to them here. But they're about the NEA and the NEA basically withdrawing or terminating grants, and then also possibly being shut down. The three of us did half of one of them. The first episode, which is a history of the NEA. The second one is a conversation about the loss of these funds with Mary Gannon from CMLP, Adam Levy from Transit, and Michael Holtman from the Center for the Art of Translation. There will be a third part coming. And the third part actually relates to one thing I want to say about this is that people have been asking about like how to support things, what to do. You can support Open Letter by taking out a subscription. All of our finances go through Deep Vellum, so you can donate to them. But I do want to point out that like one of the things that we did not talk about that is part of this third podcast that's coming is the idea that nonprofit publishers do a lot more than just publish books. That a real nonprofit publisher is providing a service to the field or to the literary community as a whole. And that this podcast, 2 month review, is always part of our grants to the NEA. And one of the reasons that we got funded by them, I believe, in part at such a particular level, is that we were doing things like this to reach out and help readers or to serve readers, to give readers an entryway into these difficult books. So when you think about things that might go away from the NEA, it may not be the books themselves that you're going to miss. It may be opportunities such as this. We're going to continue because I don't care. I'm paid by the university. I can do this for fun. But, other organizations may have a different time. So think about that when you're thinking about
I
idea.
don't think anybody's gonna miss this.
This is the
Was
best part of most people's week.
was I the only person on any of those talks that was happy the NEA's finally getting rid of funding stupid stuff like this? Is that contrarian or
Bri- Brian's like, I'm getting my Wednesdays back, baby.
Yeah.
because I wasn't sure
Day
because sometimes I
drinking.
jump between here and doing some spots on Blaze TV and I forgot which one I was on and I put the wrong hat on.
OAN. Just like
Yeah.
just a little dropping some knowledge on the OAN about conspiracy theories. You got it. I gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, but this like things like the Best Translated Book Award, the Translation Database, 3%
Yeah.
podcast or website, and all that stuff is all kind of like the ancillary parts of being a nonprofit publisher, and that's the part that's kind of also under threat. So, anyways, with that in mind, we're going to talk about Golden Notebook, which we go up to the beginning of Free Women. We go through the red notebook. We go through the next color notebook, which was something blue, and then the yellow notebook as well. The blue notebook seems to be a novel that Anna is writing about Ella, a woman who seems to be sort of a stand-in for her in certain regards. And then the yellow notebook is one of it starts out as like her recounting her psychoanalytic meetings, but then becomes just a series of headlines and news reports about bombings and deaths and various other atrocities. So that's what we're talking about today. What was your general impression? I feel like this, I'm going to say one thing before we go on is that this really is as the first iteration. I think now we're getting after this episode, after this section, we get to the game. The game starts. The game is afoot after this. We had to set the table. All the table has been set. We have Free Women. We have the 4 notebooks. We are ready to hit the next gear. But what do you think, Brian?
I like it's gaining more momentum, which I'm liking. Uh, so yeah, onward and upward.
I mistakenly was reading through this book, reading Doris Lessing before he came on here, which I guess you can't. It's always mirrored. I know things that I don't wanted to know. I didn't want to know. I remember
About the
things that I didn't
author
want to remember.
about
I
the author herself
know about the
or
book.
about the book itself. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Row.
yep. I remembered like I knew bits and pieces, but then I read parts of this. I was like, kind of wish I had forgotten that. I kind of wish I had like remained completely ignorant and blissful, but that's neither here nor there. There's one paragraph I think that would be interesting for you guys to hear. But Kaya, what's your take? Because you've also read further ahead and sort of know certain things that maybe coming.
Yes, I may be more adept at forgetting
Good.
in general. I think my
Oh, no,
voluntary,
you're young. You have young nubile brain. You have like it's not been smoothed out by years of whiskey and neglect.
but I think my ability to voluntarily not recall things is possibly my good strong game on that. I interestingly enough had the same reaction I did as the first time I was reading, or rather listening to the book, is that it took me it took me a few times of going back to the beginning of the Ella and Paul story to just understand where are we at, just to understand what was going on, part of that it was part of a notebook, that it was part of a story, that it was part of a novel. Because the transition is just that little, I mean, it looks like an agave, but it's not an agave, that little
Well, it does say each one of the notebooks does have a little bracket that
yeah, but we go from Jean Baker, wife of Minority Party official,
hmm.
and then and then there's the little bracket, the yellow notebook, but like it's such a it's such a demure transition that I did have to go back several times to just like I said to place myself and understand where I was, and then like hit the ground running like Brian was saying. It was moving along nice and briskly. And I do remember listening to this for the first time and being like, wait, I thought that it was Anna and Michael and not Ella and Paul. And it's kind of like reading a soap opera when you're like starting around season 5 and something that's been going on for 26 years. And just trying to wrap your head around it. But I still think it's fun.
That's the way to do it. So I did make a mistake and like we were I meant for us to go through 160, but we went to 159 last time to end the red thing. The red notebook, I don't know if there's anything from those last couple pages that really matters. I mean, we know that that's about the British communist side of things. We'll come when we come back to the idea of the communists and the socialists and all that. I think I do have some things to talk about, but focusing on the yellow notebook, which takes up like the vast majority of our reading this week, it is kind of a novel, the beginnings of a novel or the working on of a novel called The Shadow of the Third, written by this woman named Ella, who works at a magazine doing kind of a Miss Lonely Heart's responses to people writing in about like medical conditions. And all the medical conditions are like seemingly untreatable. And her responses are generally like, go get a hobby, meet some people. Your life sucks. And it's like, it's very, very funny. She works, Dr. West is her kind of like overseer. He seems like a prick. She goes to a party. She lives with Julia, has a son, Michael, goes to a party, meets this guy who's a psychologist, starts having an affair with him. His wife is named Marion. Um,
Muriel.
Muriel. Well, that's the thing. So these names are going to become important, I believe, and are representative of things such as Ella being Anna. Those are close. The double repeated letters in the middle. The fact that Paul is the name of the psychologist she's having this affair with, Paul Tanner. Paul is also in the Black Notebook. Michael is the person
Mhm.
that Anna is having an affair with. Michael is the name of the son in the novel The Shadow of the Third, in which Ella is writing a novel about a kid who commits suicide, who could be Tommy. There's lots of like interplay between who is who, where is this coming from, what are the doublings and the connections. Because you talked about, Brian, like the fragmentation. And in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
this is like this constant doubling of these characters and like what is real and what is not. Because like in this section of the Yellow Notebook, like Ella's talking about stuff that she's incorporating essentially into her novel, and Anna is incorporating stuff from her life into Ella's novel, and we're like turtles all the way down in terms of this kind of creative force and like what's being kind of said there.
Well, it makes me think of like the question of what is fiction?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
often the word I always like to use with like what fiction actually is it's a conglomerate. it's a geological term, right? Of like, I'm not a geologist, so I'm probably going to get
And our
this wrong,
business.
but yeah, but a conglomerate, as far as it's a type of rock where it's a bunch of different things almost kind of cemented together and like cobbled to create something, like all these different pieces that create something.
Mhm.
And so people always would ask, like, how much of that was real? Or
Yeah.
it's like they always assume the I is you when you're writing something, right? And a lot of times it kind of is you when you're writing something, but you cut out boring parts, or you fictionalize parts, or you want to explore something, or you ask what if questions. And what if I had done that? And what if I slept with that person? And what would have happened if I had done? And you start dreaming up this new life and this possibility and this, you know, cinematic universe of infinite possibilities. And I feel like that's what we're getting with these different notebooks, different parts of one character's self and exploring it in different ways. And in this yellow one, it's just a fictional. It's weird because Anna's a fictional person, but this yellow notebook is a fictional part of Anna's own life within the book. So it's this weird rabbit hole of book within a book within a book within a
Yeah.
yeah.
Sort of
Yeah.
without being like too like too much, or without there's a difference, but like At Swim Two Birds by Flann O'Brien has the similar sort of setup where there's a, a guy writing a book about a character writing a book in which the characters rebel against that author within that book
Mhm.
by, and you like can go up and down. It's very funny and involves like it's got a different tone, a different sort of game that's at play. But this is because we are assuming in every level, we're taking this at face value the way that you would with like any natural, like conventional novel from this time period, in which the Anna and Molly section is our baseline reality, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
real.
Mhm.
The notebooks are Anna's real notebooks. What she writes inside them is fiction. Well, or
Yeah.
like an account of different portions of her life, like a
Or
Well,
recounting.
I feel like Lessing, the
Yeah.
Free Women part, I feel like Lessing went to really great lengths to have like a hyper realistic,
Hmm.
and whether she's playing a trick on us or not, who knows? But I I think starting off like this is reality, and these notebooks, you can do whatever you want with the other parts of them, how you want to navigate it. But here's your, like you said, here's your baseline, here's your footing, and we can explore from there. But
And the thing that struck me in reading this part and starting to see all these names recur and get kind of like what you said, when I listened to it, I do remember getting lost at a couple points where I was just like, again, like who's Ella, or like who's this? And you're like, oh, I'm still in this notebook, because it's like it is like you say, just like one little line. If you miss it, you're just lost off and see. But
yeah.
thinking about it today and for this week, anyways, the Black Notebook is Anna saying, well, this was the real story that I made my novel out of. But like, why do we believe that? Or do we believe that? Like, what trust does one have in a character in a novel telling you about themselves? Right?
Yeah.
Like, if we go into a
Yeah.
pure postmodern mode of this, like everything's fucking suspect.
Which sounds like a mind path that I like to go down of like trying to find all the nooks and crannies and the secrets and what game is being played. I do like how Brian put it of the just all like the multiverse of these notebooks. And while you guys were talking, I'm thinking that's actually I really like this idea of doing that and writing for yourself of I mean even talks about like I the one of the characters saying like this is what I do is I go through these situations, these relationships in my life, and then I overanalyze them. That's just what I do. That's the pattern. That's the pattern. That's always going to be the pattern, and it's painful, but once you've done it, you're always going to do it. And I'm thinking like what a great way to like instead of sit and mull and just let the pressure cooker of coulda woulda shoulda go in your head, writing it all down in notebooks, but then conversely, it's like, well, that's still pretty fucking obsessive. And you probably should be talking to someone about it because at what point do you stop recognizing yourself, to Chad's point, like what's real and what's not?
This is like, and I mean, do keep in mind that she wrote a book called Descent, Briefing for a Descent into Hell, about a person going mad. Not too many years before this book came out. It's like that meme. Isn't there like some meme right now where it's like, if I had only gotten a hug or some basic thing like that. Like it's like I do all this dumb shit, but like if someone had hugged me, like maybe I wouldn't be doing this dumb shit. Anna
Yeah,
needs a hug.
chose
Um,
the wrong adventure.
that was the wrong adventure. This is the part that was interesting to me from here that gives away nothing. So there is then this is related to books that none of us have read, but like I mentioned last week, the Martha Quest series is being written as Golden Notebook comes out. Comes out in the middle of this Children of Violence series, and apparently this relates. So for the name Anna, this is from whatever rereading Doris Lessing by Claire Sprague. Um, for the name Anna, Lessing reverses the explosion of the male A's and female M's that characterize the Martha Quest novels. Anna is stronger than Molly, as Alfred Adolf, Anderson Ethan, and Andrew are, on the whole, stronger than the Marthas, Mays, Marnies, Maisies, and Marjories who pervade the Martha novels. Anna takes on the male A and gives the female M to Molly, as we have seen, uh, stopping at that point in time. But there is something playing out that I don't think I wouldn't have been aware of, that in the Children of Violence series, all the dudes are A's and represent a sort of strength, and all the women are M's. And then we do have Anna here sort of adopting that persona, and there are a lot of M named women. Like Molly, and then what's the woman out in Africa's name again? The one that I'm always curious about that doesn't seem to exist.
I think is it Mary Rose?
Mary
Marion?
Rose.
Oh,
Marion is Paul's wife. There's like
Marion. Yeah, there's
all
the
these
Marion,
Muriel, yeah.
Muriel, whatever.
Mariel,
Whatever.
Um,
No, don't you whatever.
Molly.
Bad enough she has an M name. Don't you diminish her further.
I think isn't there a Marion in here though? I think at some
Yeah,
point there might be. There
yeah,
was.
there is. And there's even a line where Molly and Marion are talking. You're like, oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's Richard's wife.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So there's Marion's, Muriel's, Molly's, like all those. And if we take this little bit at face value and put it in context of that, like as a piece of like directing you, A names are masculine, M names are feminine. Anna is masculine in some sense or androgynous. That then I think ties into this yellow notebook where we know that Doris Lessing in her intro is like, this isn't just about relationships between the sexes, blah, blah, blah. However, that yellow notebook and that what was it called? The Shadow of the Third. Now that she's writing is really a lot about that. Like to the point that Paul's like, the real revolution of the 20th century is women overthrowing men. And being like he's the original men's rights activist, apparently. But that if we put that in there, there is that idea of the shadow of the third, which she in this novel is saying is like the kind of other woman, the other force, this kind of doubt, where in the novel, Ella loves Paul, and wants to have his babies or marry him. Everyone's always talking about marriage. And he's like, you're always cheating on me. You're with this other people or with this other people. It becomes clear that he was always cheating on her and moves to Nigeria to sort of escape. And that other third is some kind of like, I don't know where you put it, but there is something about her relating to women and relating to men throughout this book. And like Ella, Anna, everyone kind of being doubles and reflections, and it's like a house. I think this could become a house of mirrors. And if we go that deep in it, what did you guys think of the actual novel though? This Shadow of the Third thing.
I always have a hard time with novels within novels. Um, if you analyze them too closely, there's not enough differentiation. Um,
Which, yeah,
and so it can become a little tricky sometimes. You ever notice that with the novels within novels where the author can't get out of their own way to change it just enough or to filter it through the person that's supposed to be writing the novel, the character. It's really hard to. It's like a puppeteer. Like, how good of a puppeteer do you have to be where if you're a marionette and your marionette strings are controlling a marionette that has its own puppet, and so you have to like figure out how to get the movements to work right. But
yeah. I It does have the same tone, I think, of the Molly Anna
yeah.
section, but like it feels like some of the stuff is being reworked. I feel like it's being reworked both from Anna and Molly and also the Black Notebook. Like the fact that there's two Pauls, Paul in the Black Notebook, Paul here, the Michael stuff, like we're seeing like kind of a reworking, but yeah, the tone is similar. I thought at first I was like, this is not super interesting. And it was less
Um,
interesting as like a written piece than it was when she's like, here's what I'm trying to do. You're never gonna notice the theme until the end and blah 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 and like describing her book. And I also thought that that Paul guy is a piece of shit. Like just
oh,
generally just
100%.
You,
eh,
you whore, you filthy bitch, or what
fucking
happened? I was like, what
crazy,
the
man.
hell are we reading?
Yeah,
Yeah,
seriously. There's
100%.
You, or what was the, there's one line in there, I forget which part it was, but you, you barren bitch. Like, that's like the most mean thing I've ever heard somebody say. And when you do it with like the British accent, it makes it even worse
oh
somehow.
my
It's like, oh
God.
my God.
Seriously. Like British men are kind of the worst men on earth. So like we're already like starting at a low point, and then you're taking this
Yeah.
motherfucker and like giving him like agency. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
it's
never get
really
any
hard.
second dates on Grinder when I call somebody barren bitch. I can tell you that.
I, at the top of this page, I put, this is gross. Oh, yeah, because there's even a section where like, and Anna's writing this as a very much a male, it's a very
Mhm.
male section in a weird way. Like the depiction of like men is very brutal and like almost like focused on like his thing, but then
And
also
jealous. Is extremely jealous, very possessive, and then
and liars.
like and just pent up rage, like looking for an excuse to explode, like just any excuse.
A little bit of mansplaining too, like with the doctors, like I've figured out that these is it geese
Yeah,
cannot have vaginal orgasm, so no woman can have a vaginal orgasm. And he's like, yeah, I mean, and then he's like, the way that that scene is played out, like Paul's like,
well
you don't know
that
what
is
happened to
true
me
though,
today.
but
Yeah. He's like, you don't know what happened to me today. I listened to this great lecture. And he's like, and she's like, and sort of leans away and he's like, yeah, you're just like all women, leaning away, not wanting to hear about how you can't have a vaginal orgasm. And just like, Jesus fucking Christ. That's the grossest ass scene, like in so
Yeah.
many ways.
Took me 3 hours and 5 coffees to get a woman to not be mad at me anymore.
I know, seriously, like, what are you
What did you
telling
do?
her? What did you say? Like, you could just have walked out of that and been like,
yeah,
where she's like, I'm not gonna sit and listen to some dude tell women about orgasms. Like, fuck that. He could,
I
Paul
have
could have just been
no
like,
idea.
you're right.
I have no idea why, but I'm banned from Instagram, Bumble, I'm
Hinge.
banned off of.
And they don't tell
Yeah,
you
I
why.
put, I
They
put
don't
in
tell
they
my,
you
I
don't
put
tell
in
why.
my
you why.
bio, I don't like T girls. Maybe that
I'm
has to
bi.
deal with it.
I'm banned on everything.
I think
Deep
Oh
ref to
no.
the reference to the rehearsal for anyone listening. This
deep
is
reference to the rehearsal.
not deep. It's right there on the surface, but like,
It
and
is.
it was last week.
Um, I think I think other things about this section that I thought were interesting were like going back to the obsessiveness and going back to the patterns. Like it's hard to read this because like you guys were saying, Anna is writing this novel, and I think to kind of what Brian was saying, she's like trying to play it back through a different lens, what her experience was, but she's still making the same mistakes. Like I don't think she's trying so hard I don't think she's trying to course correct, but like trying to analyze where she went wrong. And it's like I feel like you can see that she sees it, but then she's still making those acknowledgments of, but it's a pattern and it's just what's going to keep happening. And I'm going to keep doing that. So that was hard to read that there's just like a vicious cycle. I also do want to point out that I love the fact that, okay, granted, there were, what was it, like 50 male doctors to 15 female doctors, but the fact that there is any number of female doctors above one in a lecture hall. So there are female doctors, which great. The fact that her psychoanalyst is female, like there still are a lot of women in powerful positions. Even the magazine
Yes.
editing, yes, it's a women's magazine. Yes, Patricia didn't get to edit the magazine she wanted to, but she's not exactly like a fashion person, so it's better suited. But I do think it's important to or not important, maybe I don't know. It's important or worthwhile to mention that even though these female characters are constantly finding themselves in these cycles with these shitty men and shitty relationships, there are still a lot of women who do have mean, maybe not power is not the right way, but they are in positions of being able to just be like, fuck this, I'm leaving the room.
Yeah, yeah. Although I did mention this in the text this morning, but does this book pass the Bechdel test? They're constantly talking about men. They're constantly talking about marriage. They're like the conversations with our psychotherapists about dreams don't, but they don't talk about men. They talk about creativity, which I think maybe is
Mhm.
also interesting to look at. And then, but there's so many when women are talking to each other, they're frequently talking about like, are you going to go out? Maybe you can meet a man. Maybe you can get this guy at the party. Blah blah blah. Do you still want to get married, right? Like, yeah, this like there's so much of an overtone of like there's the male omnipresence in this book is like is can be a little bit stifling, and I think that's intentional. But
Oh, for
Well, yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's coming in between two parts of Free Women, right?
yeah,
Yeah. And for sure. And just
Yeah.
let's go ahead, Brian.
No, no, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You
coming
got nothing else.
pops in between the free women.
Typical guy. I'm done in, I just need 3 seconds. I'm done. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Brian's like,
I'm
this podcast could have been a text
I'm gonna
message.
roll. I'm gonna roll over and sleep. You do you.
Um, Jesus, damn. Yeah, you're right. Good point. That's disarming. I don't know what to do now with my lady brain. Um, uh, shit, what was I gonna say?
About the presence of
It's
men.
intentionally oppressive, the presence of
Intentionally
men.
oppressive.
Yeah, it's intentionally oppressive. Fuck. You guys banter for a bit. I lost it.
Yeah, so I did find too that Paul is like the prototypical member of the game, the or abides by the game, those rules of how to pick up women as he constantly negs her throughout this.
Oh, the push, like pushing and pulling, and
And well, and negging and getting them to like, you don't respond, they come to you sort of thing.
yeah, yeah.
He's like, Ella, you could be a really beautiful woman if you would let yourself be. She said, so you don't think I'm
Jeez,
beautiful then? He half groaned, half laughed, and pulled her down on the bed. Obviously not, he said. Well, then she said, smiling and confident. It was like, dude, what the fuck? Like,
he
this
needs a
is
feather. He just needs a feather boa and some
couples.
animal print, and you're ready to go out on the town there, Paul.
Which that actually helped me. No, that didn't help me remember what it was. But so the oppressiveness of the male characters and um I mean the Bechdel test, yeah, they're constantly talking about men, and there is this, to bring the feminism and the female forwardness of the book to the conversation again is like, wouldn't it be fair to say that feminism is a thing because it had to become a thing, like because of how society has built up the roles, the gender roles. So like even that they're being, they have agency, they're making decisions, they can get jobs, be doctors, be psychoanalysts, be editors, authors, make their own money. Of course they're going to still obsess, or not of course, but it's yeah, they're going to obsess over men and constantly talk about men because that's where they've come from. That's what society has done. Where even if you are by, for all intents and purposes and appearances an independent woman, um, it doesn't, it makes sense that there would still be those moments and times where you're just like, well, yeah, fuck, like of course we're going to still talk about them because like
Yeah,
I
so
don't know.
this
I
this
don't know that I have an ending point to that, but
this this book is written before the beginnings of the sexual revolution as we know them.
yeah.
Like you said, Brian, but there's a curious paragraph about that on page 203, where after one of the little the little dinkuses, sex. The difficulty of writing about sex for women is that sex is best when not thought about, not analyzed. Women deliberately choose not to think about technical sex. They get irritable when men talk technically. It's out of self-preservation. They want to preserve the spontaneous emotion that is essential for their satisfaction. And then sex is essentially emotional for women. How many times has that been written? And then starts undercutting that point. And yet, there's always a point, even with the most perceptive and intelligent man, when a woman looks at him across the gulf. He hasn't understood. She suddenly feels alone, hastens to forget the moment because she doesn't want, she does, because if she doesn't, she would have to think. This like representation I think is very interesting in terms of like Anna struggles in this part of the book about writing about sex, refers to like Paul becoming mechanical and then says like a man would never write mechanical. And means it in a different way. But also there's a weird thing going on with the theys and the theirs there. Like she's not identifying as a woman in that paragraph. to some degree, where it's they want to preserve the spontaneous emotion that is sensible for their satisfaction. They get irritable when men talk technically. Um, that sort of distancing, I think, is kind of curious in that particular passage speak. They're also like motherhood is part of this, but not been like a huge. I mean, it's always present, but it's not been like discussed a lot. But obviously, like Tommy and Janet, a lot of J names too. Janet being Anna's daughter in the Free Women section, and then she has the son Michael in the Ella section. And then there's a part right before the section I read on 202 where he's like, you don't even need women don't even need men anymore. They can just have babies by putting ice on their ovaries, which is like, wow.
Which goes counter to everything as a Baltic Eastern European we've been taught. Ice kills the ovaries
Pretty sure it doesn't work.
And can give you a head cold. It'll make you sterile and give you the sniffles.
Not sure that that's scientifically sound advice, but
I mean, more or less than ovaries on ice gives you science
that's
babies.
What I mean.
Like,
that's what I mean. The ovaries on ice.
Okay.
Babies is the part that I
don't think either science is sound, to be honest, but
yeah. Their relationship is tense. The fact that one other thing that's worth as a motif here, like rhizomatically, is that she wants to write. Ella is writing a novel about suicide, which comes out. Paul reads it and is basically like not impressed, doesn't seem to care. Also, it says at one point in time, well, you're just using me to like get information about suicides for your book, blah blah. Throughout that section, throughout the Ella notebook, it feels like she's gonna kill herself and like be a representation of the book that she's just written. And there's even the section where she's like, it's always about death, like 200, death again, death come out of her novel and into her life. And yet death is in the form of energy, for this man works like a madman out of a furious, angry compassion. This man who says he wishes he were dead never rests from work or for the helpless. About related to Paul and like his kind of complex like anger and death things. And then you get to
Le Petit Meurtre. Yeah. So whatever the little death.
the little death.
vaginal or
we talk about sex
vaginal or
right
Vaginal
clitoral?
or, I mean, there's no such thing as we know.
So it's just clitoral. It can't be
I
vaginal.
have a fun one to roll out and so like blow it up if this jump on this grenade if it doesn't work. So I found it very interesting. Anna's very much more interior and introverted, whereas Molly is an artist that is more extroverted and exterior. So you get those two sides of artistry, and then she starts talking about sex, and the vaginal orgasm is only achieved through like deep love. And then when she starts talking about mechanical, it's the stimulation of the clitoris. And so you can talk about interior, exterior, introvert, extrovert, and the way pleasure is working with that as well.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, like with these doubling, that I keep seeing these two things taking place throughout characters, throughout the way they talk about things, throughout they experience things. There's repetitions in different avenues that I keep seeing pop up. It's really fascinating how she's constructing this.
Absolutely.
So who's the vagina in their
Yeah.
relationship?
Who's the vagina?
Who's the foot?
Anna's more looking for like meaning, but it requires a stronger connection. Whereas if you start just getting like cheap, quick, mechanical, that's the more kind of extroverted. She's kind of like with the extroverted stuff, and she's more interested in like a more meaningful way of doing art. And you see that too with the way, is this a good book? Is this a bad book? Is this deeply thought and considered in like a love letter, or is it just kind of like a mechanical roll it out there kind of thing?
Yeah.
As well as the perception of the book, because Paul is like, oh, it was whatever. And even she says like it was whatever, but it seems like it seems like, she writes it off as a whatever book as well. Ella does, but it seems like it was much more of that introspection that you're talking about, Brian.
It's so cold. What a dick. But also like her idea constantly of like, well, I didn't really have sex with my husband because there was like, I didn't see that as sex. Like that relationship to it is interesting too, where like what you're saying, Brian, of like the emotionality, and she refers to sex being emotional, that there's like the process, but that's not really what she's talking about or relating
Yeah,
to.
you can see like with this fictional version of herself with 204, right? When Ella first made love with Paul during the first few months, what set the seal on the fact she loved him and made it possible for her to use the word was that she immediately experienced orgasm, vaginal orgasm, that is, and she could not have experienced it if she had not loved him. It is the orgasm that is created by the man's need for a woman and his confidence in that need. As time went on, he began to use mechanical means. I looked at the word mechanical. A man wouldn't use it. Paul began to rely on manipulating her externally, on giving Ella clitoral orgasms.
We have said the word vaginal and clitoral more than any other podcast.
Well, we've avoided moist, so that's good.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, obviously, you could just use that. You think of that just strictly as her character, Anna, is fictionally writing this book and talking about experiencing sex in a different way, in different ways, and how you can um, have relationships with men. But yeah, I feel like I don't know, there's layers and deepness to it, and it's not just the carnal
Yeah.
what's carnally there. There's so much more to it than just that. So I think it's a
mhm.
really interesting kind of parallels that she's setting up.
It was the thing I was going to say too with the death thing is that she's writing about death. She mentions that death. Then she goes to the yellow notebooks, and after she records a few things about her dreams and the interactions with the psychoanalyst, she goes straight to like pasting in headlines and news things that are almost all about death. Like almost like
Mhm.
every single one. The H bomb, you got the A bombs by Eisenhower, you got the oh my God, what's their name? The Rosen I want to say Rosencrantz.
Rosenberg's
Rosenberg's. I was like, Rosencrantz is,
Rosencrantz and
and it's like, God damn it.
Guildenstern.
Like, that's definitely not the where we're at.
Yeah.
The Rosenbergs, that part. Korea, 371 killed, wounded, or missing. Russia builds an A bomber, fastest in the world. All this stuff that's like dead, dead, dead. 12,790 Allied war prisoners. 250,000 South Korean civilians have been murdered by the Reds in Korea, like all this death stuff. So that's right there too. Versus I guess like the life being both like the sexual part of it, the orgasm, but also like the idea of like what you're saying, Kai, about being in a position of power, or having like this career, or having like their self. There is like that kind of back and forth too. But she's kind of death obsessed in these notebooks.
Yeah.
A little bit. So
I'm
this is the
looking.
one that the one I didn't understand. I marked on 236 for December 3rd, 52. Dartmoor man flogged. Thug gets 12 lashes with the cat express. What the fuck is that? Like, what
The whip.
I understood like next to none of those words.
He gets whipped. The is it the cat o'
The
nine tails
cat.
or whatever
Cat
it
of
is?
nine tails. Why don't you say cat of nine? The express?
You got it. Hey, it's the newspaper. It takes effort and money to line up all those letters. Maybe they didn't have enough N's or L's.
But yep. Stalin dies in the middle of this, which
Again.
ties back into our to the communist side of things and the being part of the British Communist Party.
Mhm.
Lots and lots of death. Then comes back to the um to the therapist. Finally has another dream for her last appointment, and this is a dream in which she has a box at a party, and then this happens. She has a box. She's carrying it around. People are like, she's shouting, "Open the box! Open the box!" And then I open the box and force them to look. But instead of a beautiful thing, which I thought would be there was a mass of fragments and pieces. Not a whole thing broken into fragments, but bits and pieces from everywhere, all over the world. I recognized a lump of red earth that I knew came from Africa, and then a bit of metal that came off a gun from Indochina, and then everything was horrible. Bits of flesh from people killed in the Korean War, and a Communist Party badge off someone who died in a Soviet prison. This looking at the massive ugly fragments was so painful that I couldn't look, and I shut the box. So that's maybe a good place to stop since I know Brian has a hard out. Do you have a line that you want for your line of the week?
I don't, but I do have this. I actually dated a communist when I was in college because that's the
Oh
time
yeah.
to be a communist was in
Yeah.
college. and it completely like did not work out. And I should have known because there are red flags everywhere.
Like
Yes.
literally. Dun, dun. Well played. My line of the week is from 213, 214, where she's talking about Dr. West. She said, "No, that's the West language. They use idiotic phrases like flighty peace and getting tired of the gay life. How extraordinarily common these respectable middle class people are." And I just love that they're the kind of people who use these dumb terminologies.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that actually, if we can put a pin in it for next week, because we did not talk about the class distinction. I mean, we talked about it previously, but there's more class distinction stuff. And also, I'm stuck on now the part that Brian read, the word manipulation, because there is a shit ton of manipulation going on, both
Mhm.
emotionally, like internal manipulation, aka vaginal, and external manipulation, both between friends, between lovers, between parent and child. So much of it. Okay, mine's on 160,
Okay.
at the very top,
That marks the
and which I mean, yeah, okay, so at 160, the very, very top. Because of her verbal incontinence, which shocks people or makes them laugh, she is developing the personality of a clown or a licensed humorist. She has no sense of humor at all. It's like
love
verbal
it.
incontinence.
Love it. The when you say the class thing too, I'd mark that in here that like in the Black Notebook they talk a lot about the color bar, and in the this well, is it yellow? Yeah, the Yellow Notebook
Mhm.
talks a lot about the class bar, the class division. So that too is another parallel and something definitely talk about. I'll leave that the title for this episode is going to be one of my favorite lines too. Literature is analysis after the event, which is
Yeah.
also
Yep.
very, very solid. So we'll
Have
see
that
that.
also.
So next week we go up to page 292. So it's a shorter read for next week, and that will end where the Yellow Notebook continues, saying the shadow of the third. So we will stop there for next week. So we get into Free Women Part 2. We get a little bit more notebooks, and that'll be that. So if you're listening, please rate and review us at Apple Podcasts, at Spotify, at wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube, where you can give us thumbs up and subscribe. You can find all information about Open Letter Books at openletterbooks.org. Buy our books, subscribe, support us. We can always use it. And I guess we'll be back next week with more Doris Lessing.